Hi there, it's Lou from This Patch of Earth, and today I wanted to talk to you about some of my favourite ground covers. Now, these ground covers are not just there to cover the ground, they have so many uses, and that's why I'm really excited to tell you about them. Obviously, a ground cover needs to provide protection for your soil, and some of the ones I'm going to show you do that in a really special way because they've got thick, fleshy leaves which are full of water, and so that actually provides even more protection than just any old ground cover. Now, one of them I actually have at my feet, but some of the other attributes that these had to have to make it into my top list was that they had to be edible as well. So that's a little bit of an ask, and this is one of the ones that we have here. This is actually called baby sunrose, and this is one of the ones that does have the very thick fleshy leaf and also is edible. Now, baby sunrose can be used in salads, and I'll actually put a link up for you to a chef's website that raves about using this in food. What you do to use this in your salads is you just use the very tips of the plant, so just the fleshy tips where the new leaves are coming out, and in summer, in the spring, they have beautiful red flowers, just little tiny red daisy-like flowers that open up in the sun, and you can eat those as well, and they look really pretty on your food. So you just take off the little tips and pop those, wash them and pop them into your salads, and what happens is that actually creates an even bushier plant because there are new growth points behind each of the leaves, and of course when you take that off, that's going to encourage those to grow a little bit like basil. Here's a clump of the baby sunrose, and what I want to show you is that underneath you can see how much more moist the soil is under the baby sunrose compared to the soil surrounding it, which is much drier. And the other thing I like about this particular plant is that it doesn't root everywhere. It doesn't stick in roots every time it touches the soil like some things do. So it's not going to impact on the plants around it as much as some other ground covers may do. The other thing about it that's great is that you can trample on it and it doesn't seem to mind at all. So it can even go over paths, it can go into high traffic areas, and it really does rebound back very well from being trodden on. So baby sunrose, all in all, is one of my favourites, and of course once the spring comes along, right through until the end of autumn, it's got its beautiful little pink flowers, so it's actually really pretty as well. This next ground cover that I wanted to share with you is called Warrigal Greens. It's also called New Zealand spinach, tetragonia, and Botany Bay greens. And it's called Botany Bay greens because Captain Cook actually recorded it as helping to cure his ship's crew of scurvy when they arrived there. Now, this particular plant does have quite a high oxalate content, similar to spinach. So you use it very similar to spinach. You can use the young leaves in salads, but you wouldn't want to eat bucket loads of it raw. There was a study out of the Southern Cross University in 2015 that found that the oxalate content of the Warrigal Greens was very similar to spinach. So it is recommended that if you're eating large quantities of it, that you do perhaps blanch it first, just in some boiling water for 30 seconds, a minute, and then drain it, and then you can use it in all of your recipes. But it is a lovely fleshy leaf, again, just like baby sunrose. It's full of water, so it does provide a really good thick ground cover. They're also fantastic for suppressing weeds. And this one has a tiny little yellow flower, which is also edible. And I just love it. It produces a massive amount of foliage, again, similar to the baby sunrose, very quick growing. And it's available all year round here in Melbourne. So we've always got some fresh greens to come and harvest. And I just really value this plant. We've got it growing all over the garden. It can be a little bit hard to get going with your first plant from seed, but do persist, because once you've got it going, it just seems to pop up everywhere. And you'll have Warrigal Greens forever. Another of my favourite edible ground covers is at my feet underneath our pink lady apple tree, and that is Nasturtiums. And you can see from here the leaves are beautiful and lush and green and gorgeous, and this is just starting to take off now, sort of late winter, early spring seems to be its favourite time of year in our garden. So what this does is, apart from being edible, obviously you can use it in your salads, that's the young leaves. You can pop the older leaves into stir fries and soups and casseroles and curries and that kind of thing. But also the leaves are really, really good for using in sushi, so you can wrap them underneath your seaweed and it gives that wasabi flavour. It's got quite a punch to it, so they're really perfect for using in that way. And also the flowers are edible, so you can pop them into salads. You can pop them on the top of cakes to look pretty, and the seeds are also edible, and I pickle them and use them as capers. In fact, their old-fashioned name is poor man's capers, and I pickle those with some fresh dill, and they're absolutely delicious on anything that you would normally use capers on, so your pizzas, pastas, all of that kind of thing. But the other thing about nasturtiums is that they grow really thick and lush, and they do suppress weeds, they keep the soil moist, they look beautiful as they're growing, and they produce a heck of a lot of biomass. So I find that during the spring and summer they're prolifically flowering, perhaps late winter, early spring, into summer, very early summer, and then as the summer goes on and it gets really hot, they start to get leggy, they start to get old, they perhaps are producing a lot more seeds than flowers. And at that point in time, they've usually got a load of biomass, which is perfect timing when it's really hot. So you can chop and drop them and use them as mulch around the trees or plants where you've been growing them. So it really is a fantastic, valuable flower. And of course, there's so many pretty colours. Why wouldn't you want to have nasturtiums in the garden? The only thing is, I find that once you've had them in a few years, they self-seed so readily, even though I try and eat as many seeds as possible, that I'm pulling them out by the hundreds. And I've just pulled out a whole load from underneath our mandarin tree. There's just masses of them, because what I don't want to happen is for them to compete too much with the roots of my fruit trees. I don't mind a couple growing under there, but they get really, really big. So I certainly don't want hundreds and hundreds growing under each tree. But the great thing about these ones is that a lot of them have still got very viable roots on them. They've come up with the roots, so I'm going to have a go at popping them in the front garden and see if they will take there, because in my experience, even just laying them on top of the ground, they seem to sometimes recover and actually take root. So I think that they should be fine, and that's going to give me a whole lot of new free plants to put into our front garden. So anyway, nasturtiums, very valuable plant, beautiful. I recommend that you grow them. So many of you probably have this flower in your garden and know it very well. It's a very popular plant. It's called sweet alyssum. And one of the things that you may not know is that even though this makes a fantastic ground cover and of course attracts all the pollinators, we've actually had bees in the garden today on these flowers, even though it is a cold, wintry Melbourne day. But the thing you may not know is that it's edible. So you can actually eat the little leaves and the flowers. They're quite peppery. So, pack a little pepper punch. It's sort of like a mustard leaf or quite a strong kale flavour, but really, really nice. And in small quantities in your salads, makes them look stunning and adds a really fabulous punch of flavour. And so I definitely recommend this as a ground cover, because again, it's not really too invasive with its roots. It's great for having around your fruit trees and any of your annuals, things like tomatoes and your peppers and anything that needs pollination, because it will attract all those beneficial insects into your garden and also the predators that will get rid of some of your pests. So sweet alyssum, if you haven't got it growing everywhere, get it in, my friends. It's a good one. The next plant I'm going to show you, I wonder if you can guess what it is when I tell you a little bit about it. It's another of those fleshy, water-filled leaves, and around about the size of your thumbnail, I guess the leaf size is. It's more in the warmer climates or more in warmer weather, so it's a little bit out of season at the moment, hence you'll see that mine's looking a little bit ratty. But it is actually one of the, if not the highest omega-3 fatty acid plants on the planet. So it's really good if you're on a vegetarian or vegan diet. It's great for adding those omega-3s into your diet. And again, really good in salads in small quantities, because it does have oxalates in, and also for popping into your stir fries and curries, etc. Where do I learn about these things? Well, I've got lots of resources, but this is a little handbook that I love. It's called the Weed Forager's Handbook, because a weed is basically just a plant in the wrong position. So for me, this is not a weed, because I love where it is. And it is, drum roll, it's purslane. So as I say, it's looking a little bit leggy and ratty at the moment because it's not its season. It likes the warmer weather. but it is a great plant to have in your garden. And as long as you just keep it under control and have it in the position that you want it, it's definitely not a weed. So I hope that you've learned a little bit about purslane. It's something that I really enjoy growing. Another great edible ground cover, of course, is strawberries. And they're just perfect for putting around your fruit trees. And of course, strawberries send off their runners, which give you free plants as well. And we've got them cropping up all over the orchard now, just from a few plants. And some of them have actually got flowers on at the moment, but I probably need to take those off because really spring and summer and early autumn, of course, are the best time for strawberries. But it's a really valuable plant to have in your garden. Once you've got them in, if you take care of them, they'll just keep reproducing and you'll end up with a beautiful carpet of strawberry plants, which is what our goal is to have in the orchard here. Another favourite ground cover that we have is right next to me, and that is chamomile. And chamomile is a little bit like strawberries. It sends out these runners and creates new plants where it drops onto some soil and can pop its roots down. And chamomile is just gorgeous. I mean, even just sitting here and rubbing it, I can smell that amazing chamomile smell. And one thing that I didn't realise until quite recently is, I mean, obviously we know that the flowers can be used in teas and are edible, but I didn't realise that the leaves were edible as well. So these can go into your salads, just like carrot tops can and other types of these lovely sort of fluffy leaves. Now, a bit of a disclaimer, I'm talking to you about all these greens that you can eat. Please do your own research and make sure that you're not eating anything that you're not sure about, okay? That's really, really important. But these are just lovely because it is in full winter at the moment, and we've got these beautiful little feathery leaves here, and of course in not too long we're going to end up getting those beautiful flower buds coming and the flowers. And of course I can save them and dry them to make chamomile tea. You can use them as a rinse for your hair. You can make syrups and cordials with them. There's just so many things that you can do with them, and they really are a very attractive and valuable little ground cover in the garden. So, and edible. Who'd have known? Chamomile. This low-growing shrub that I've got here is called a Pepino, and it's a fruit bush. It's in the Solanaceae family, I think, so similar to potatoes and peppers and tomatoes. And it grows a beautiful little fruit, probably from about an egg size up to about a fist size is about the biggest that you get. And its nicknames kind of give you a clue as to what it tastes like. It's called a sweet cucumber or a melon pear. And that's kind of what it tastes like, a little bit like a melon. It's really, really juicy, incredibly juicy. And when it's sweet, it's just, when it's ripe, it's beautifully sweet and absolutely delicious. And you can eat the whole thing, including the skin. Although if we allow them to get really ripe and the skin gets a little bit firmer, we scoop it out a little bit like you do with an avocado. The plant at the moment's got flowers on, but not the fruit yet. In a subtropical or tropical climate, it will fruit all year round. But in Melbourne, it tends to fruit from spring until autumn. And it's just a wonderful ground cover. Again, it grows really wide. In fact, just a couple of months ago, I cut this right back to just a very small plant, and it's already bushed out incredibly. It's supposed to be a great companion plant for mulberry tree, which is why I've got one on either side of it. And we really, really do enjoy the fruits. You can't eat the leaves of this one, so please don't put those in your salads. But it's just a really low maintenance plant. Occasionally it can get spider mites, similar sort of diseases and pests that tomatoes and peppers might get, but to be honest, I found that it's pretty low maintenance. It does its own thing, and it provides great protection for the tree next to it because it doesn't tend to re-root. It just sticks to its central roots. I believe that it can root where it touches the soil, but that hasn't been my experience. Maybe it's because I cut it back quite regularly, so that might be something that you want to do with it. But I really recommend growing this because it's delicious. The foliage is so attractive in winter, the flowers are pretty, and the fruit when they come out are also really attractive hanging on the bush as well. So this is a Pepino, which is a South American plant and definitely well worth growing if you're in the right climate. Well, we hope you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about many of the beautiful edible ground covers that we grow on this patch of earth. And they do so much for us. They provide us with food, they provide us with soil protection, shade, moisture retention, biomass, and beauty as well as many other things. So I hope if you haven't got all of these things growing in your garden, you might consider one or two of them. And we would absolutely love, obviously this is just a very small percentage of edible ground covers that you can grow, and it changes by the season as well, but we would love to know what you're growing or what you recommend, what you have grown, any tips and hints that you've got for us, because we are still learning on our journey and love to hear what everybody else is doing. But that's it from now, from this patch of earth and Lou, over and out. See you soon.